So what are we talking about today? We're going to be talking with Craig. And I have to say, Craig is one of our members that I admire greatly. I want to know how you get the energy to do what you do. I want to know how you get the discipline to do what you do. And we're going to find out how to do all of this. Because what you're going to find out is we have a very humble man who, was it an MBE that you got recently? No, BEM.
No, it was just a Jubilee. Well, I had 2 Jubilee medals off the Lake Queen.
Yeah, absolutely. And he just coming up 2 Jubilee medals off the Lake Queen. How many people ever get 1 medal off the Queen? It's like so. And Craig runs 3 niche accounting practices focused on the music, TV, entertainment, and media industries. This might surprise many people. He runs his businesses remotely from Cornwall, in between swimming, surfing most mornings. Were you out there this morning?
I did go for a swim this morning, yeah.
Were the waves good?
No waves. It's flat at the moment, so it's good for swimming, not so good for surfing.
So just remind me, how near are you to the beach?
About 400 meters.
That's a long way, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, in between, these daily swims, surfing, let me guess the list of things that you do in between running your accountancy practices. So you volunteer with the Coast Guard Rescue. So is that once, twice a week you're doing a shift with them?
Depends on jobs, really. We had the other week, we had about four or five jobs in a week. So
yeah, and so that's you on a lifeboat and hanging off cliffs, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in the mud.
Yes. As I said, he's very humble, but he is our member who is we see as our in-house action man. You're also a paramedic first responder, so often you'll just clock in and see if any jobs come in. Am I right?
Yeah, I'm a community first responder for South West Ambulance Service. Done that for about 13 years now. So when I work from home, I just respond if the Coast Guard or ambulance service need me to do something. I just go rushing out, put my blue uniform on, my green one on.
Yeah, and we know what day it's going to be by which uniform you're wearing when you turn up. And alongside of this, you're a paranormal investigator. You obviously don't like sleep. You still practice jiu-jitsu. I imagine you still play your bass guitar. Am I right? Or does that
no, music's taken a bit of a backseat, really. Can't fit it in with everything else.
I know, and too right, as well as lecturing on various courses, and in between you somehow run an accountancy practice. And I think everybody's wanting to know, how do you do all of this stuff? So why don't you just give me a quick pen portrait of your 3 practices and how they came about?
I started off training at, well, plan A was rockstar, plan B was accounting, really. So I was playing in bands at the semi-pro level back in the day, and the van used to pick me up from work at like 5 o'clock and then drop me home about 2 in the morning. I did that for several years, and then it got to the point I kind of knew I wasn't really going to make it as a pro musician. So the next best thing was working with musicians, really. And I'd already had my own record label in Bristol at the time, and it was a small record label, but so effectively managing the artists, I got to learn a lot about day-to-day running, and we used to put events on and bits and pieces like that, really. So then when I qualified, I thought, you know what, I'll specialize in working with musicians. So I looked for firms that specialize, and they were only in London, really. So I got a job in London working for a practice that just specialized in entertainment media, and they were a practice that dealt with my kind of boyhood heroes, really. Led Zeppelin and
wow,
Robert, Jimmy, and the guys from the band. So I went up to London, worked in the city for that practice for a bit, and then moved to another practice in Camden and worked pretty much exclusively on that side of it. I wanted to go back to Bristol, didn't really want to work in London. So the tax manager, who's a friend of mine, he said, "Oh, we've got one of the partners has left here, so why don't you come back and work as a consultant?" So went back and set a sort of niche within their practice. There was a bit of a change around. I left there with the tax manager and the audit manager, and we set our own practice up back in 1999, I think, and that was called MWM, Mooney Williams May. The practice of us, they retired, and I took my practice clients out and set up Zen. And that was a niche practice based in Bristol, Southwest, dealing with exclusively entertainment media clients. My family's all from South Wales, so I'd always wanted to set an office up in Cardiff, and because the Welsh people like to kind of keep the business within Wales, really. And I was lecturing on a music managers forum. I was on the panel there on a session, and a guy came up to me and he said, "Oh, I'm an accountant in Cardiff, looking to get into niche. I've got a few. I've accidentally landed a couple of big clients in that sort of sector. I need a bit of consultancy on it. Would you help?" So I said, "Yeah." So why don't we set something up together, a joint venture practice between the two? I'll deal with all sales, marketing, and give you the technical support you need, and operationally if you can run it. So we set a practice up called Ton Media Cuff in Cardiff, and just ran that. And I normally, when I was living in Bristol, I'd go and do a day a week from the Cardiff office and built the practice up. And then about a year and a half ago, we were doing a lot of bookkeeping, VAT and payroll for a number of clients. And I thought it would be, I had a team member that was dealing with it for me, and I wanted to kind of keep them on side. They were quite a good team member. So I suggested that maybe we ported out the VAT, bookkeeping, payroll to a new practice called Kaizen, and she ran that for me, came in as an equity shareholder, and we'd run that separate practice. I'd move in the short term all the business from Zen into Kaizen, but long term I was hoping that practice would stand independently, doing VAT, bookkeeping, payroll, and looking at the MTD opportunities. And that we'd hopefully get referrals back from that practice to Zen, when it switched over, really.
So how big, when you put all your three practices together, how big are you now?
What, in terms of turnover?
Yeah, turnover, yes. Yeah.
I'd say probably with the three practices, maybe 550, something like that. So
you're not sitting there with, with one or two clients. This is a serious entity that you're somehow running around everything else. And so whenever you sort of come onto the daily power-ups in the morning, and you seemingly have this dream lifestyle that many accountants in your positions crave, where you do a tiny bit of accountancy, but you do an awful lot of other stuff that you really love. But I know at one point you were working really long hours in Cardiff, and you put in place a deliberate set of moves to have this lifestyle. What were some of those key moves that you did?
It kind of started, really, I think the catalyst was when my business partners wanted to retire, really. So I'd been working with them for 20 years. They were older than me, really old school, didn't want to outsource anything. We had to do the work. We kept our heads down, churned all the work within the practice. We had, I think, there were three of us, and then we had 3 or 4 staff. Really anti giving work out, because that would hurt profit margins. We should just do it ourselves. So I came out of a practice that nobody steered or ran the practice for 20 years. We just churned the work. There's no marketing, no nothing really, just get your head down, do the work. And it was reasonably successful. We all made decent money out of it. But when I left to set up, I was looking at, well, I've maybe got another 20 years in me to work. I thought, and I looked back over the last 20 years and said, do I really want to do that again? That's how not to do it. So that was the point when I decided to kind of take on a coach, to kind of look at what we've been doing, look at the new way. And we started pretty much the new practice from scratch. We went paperless. We started to, as part of the process, when I sat down with my coach at the time, it was a case of, right, look at what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. Every task you're doing, can you outsource, delegate, or systemize? So that's pretty much the crux of what I did. And counterintuitively, through kind of doing that process and outsourcing work and offshoring and delegating and getting other team members in, I thought, I'm going to have less, be less profitable and have less take-home money. But actually it's been the opposite. And it's really counterintuitive, because you kind of think, if I'm paying all these other people to do it, then I'm not doing the chargeable work. But actually it's worked out the other way around, really.
Mm.
And that's been the key to kind of free me up to not just look at the strategic side of the business, but actually for me, it's always been a lifestyle business anyway, because I was never interested in the profit. That's all I wanted to do. As long as I could run around, hang out with musicians, go to gigs every night of the week, I was happy. And if my mortgage was paid, I wasn't into building the practice or marketing or anything like that in my early incarnation of the practice. So after doing that for years, and I was, even with my old business partners, I was running an artist management business, and I was managing a number of sort of dance music producers. And, you know, I think 1 year, I did 150 flights. You know, I was flying out the country every Friday, Saturday, all around the world, doing, you know, tour managing, that sort of stuff, whilst doing the accountancy practice. So I've always been used to kind of having that kind of multi kind of thing going, really.
I have to say, if you ever want somebody that's going to hold your hand in a crisis, I think you are the man, aren't you? You know, power's gone down, we've got 10,000 people out there, don't worry, we can manage it. Whatever, fallen off a cliff, don't worry, I'll get you out of there. You know, there's a huge amount of stuff that you do. So you've got so many distractions here. As you said, you still run it as a lifestyle business, never the fact that it's growing and it's over 500,000 and all of this sort of stuff. How do you keep all your plates spinning? Because I've missed out, you've also got a family as well, and you do see them.
Yeah.
So you know, how do you keep all these plates spinning with what needs to happen with your practice?
I think, again, from the kind of coaching aspect, really, it was a case of, you need to kind of, if you don't make a plan, then the situation dictates what happens. If you make a plan, then, and it's the same with clients, managing clients' expectations. If you have, you know, I'm sure all the other accountants on here, if you don't set your stall out and how you're going to work, you dance to your client's tune, and that's not necessarily the most efficient way. So it's actually having clarity. And in my activities and other things, I kind of work to like a default diary. So I make sure things happen, you know, like, you know, on a Monday, regardless of what's going on at work, you know, I go to the gym at 5 for an hour, and then after that I train Filipino martial arts for 2 hours, and that's set in the diary. And then on a Wednesday, gym, combat 360, you know, it's just set in the diary. And it's making that kind of commitment so you get it done no matter what, really. Because it's, if you have the diary open, it's the same thing. There's always another email you can reply to. There's always something else you can do. But it's that sort of thing. And also, I don't know if anyone's read that Tim Ferriss book, you know, the 4-hour week or whatever. It's that kind of making the time you do as efficient as possible, but making sure that you've got the balance.
And I know, for example, you work with your growth specialist to have a call every week, accountability, just to, this is what I need to achieve, this is what needs to get done. So you're using those external influences. So with the benefit of hindsight, what were the decisions that have accelerated the growth of your practice?
I think, I know this sounds cheesy because we're on like a coaching thing, but I think if I hadn't taken the step to actually get some help with clarifying things, I wouldn't be able to do the move to Cornwall, because that was kind of, you know, we looked at, and it's interesting because when you first get some help with things, they ask you some kind of quite awkward questions, like, what's the end game? And you're like, well, I don't really know. I just wanted to hang around musicians and go to gigs. And then it starts to make you think about, actually, where's this going? And then plans start to come afoot, what you want to do. And then it's just that process of breaking it down into tiny little steps, making yourself accountable to somebody for the tiny little steps and that kind of thing. Because, you know, I meandered for 20 years. And also when I was looking at the way my business partner, you know, I'd been nagging him for years, what are you going to do? When are you going to retire? Oh, you know, not sure. And then it's a last minute, right, I'm retiring in a year's time. And I'm like, you know, okay. And then it's a bit of a rush and it's kind of not right. And so I kind of learned from seeing the way it shouldn't be done. And that was the wake up call for me to kind of go, right, you know what, I want to do this on my terms. But if I want to do it on my terms, I need to have a really good plan, to make it happen, really.
So what prompted you moving down to Cornwall? Because you sort of hinted that your practice was in Bristol, you've got a practice in Cardiff, you've got a lot of affinity with South Wales, similar to myself, because I've got my in-laws there, and I'm trying not to put the Welsh accent on. So what prompted the move to Cornwall?
Surf, waves. Simple as that, really.
So how did your staff take it when you said, we're closing the office, we're going remotely, I'm working from Cornwall, see ya?
Well, it was interesting actually, because we had an office in the centre of Bristol, and there was about 4 of us working in this sort of serviced office accommodation. It was costing us about 12 grand a year, and even worse than that was we all lived in North Somerset, and we were all spending 2 hours a day commuting into work.
Yeah.
And as time went on, it was a case of, actually, do you know what? Clients aren't really turning up to do meetings or wanting to do physical meetings anymore. It's really sparse. So I said, this is ridiculous. So we kept the office as a virtual office. So instead of 12 grand a year, it was 300 odd quid a year. And the most important thing was we were saving the commuting time. So I just had a double-story extension built at home. We had an office in there which kind of had 3 desks in it, and I just said to people, you can park on the drive, come in, and the arrangement became more loose, because I'd already started saying I didn't want to commute in, so I was only doing kind of 3 days a week in the office and 2 days from home, because I wanted to spend time with the kids and stuff. And eventually it kind of got to the way, because we invested so much effort into systemization, the paperless practice management systems, cloud-based software, all that thing really early on in the curve, that it gave us the ability to move. Because for example, when the builders came in to do the double-story extension, there was a couple of us working from the existing house. We moved office within an afternoon and we're up and running. Just because the VoIP phones just got plugged into the new router. Everything's on the cloud. That's all we have to do is move our laptops over, and there you go. So that kind of that gave us liberation. And then the team started, I sort of say, well, do you want to come in? You don't have to come in every day if you don't want to. You can work from home. And people gradually, even pre-pandemic, were like, I'll come in a day a week just to catch up on stuff, and the rest of the time I'll do it at home. And then when it was the first hints of the pandemic, I just said to the rest of the team, I said, look, let's just not see each other now, because nobody knew where it was going to go. And I just said, look, if we separate now, then the chances of us all being ill at the same time is going to be low. And then at least some of us will be around to service clients, because it was in the early days, we didn't know what the hell was going on. And that kind of went from there. Although pre-pandemic, I'd already been saying to my team, I said, look, would you be bothered if I, moved to Cornwall and you didn't, and you work from home pretty much all the time? And they're like, yeah, great, can't stand you. It'd be great not to be around you, so you smell and stuff like that. So it's kind of like they were all on board. And the way I'd worked it before was, when we moved office, I said to clients, I'm going to work to a default diary. I'm only going to do meetings on a Thursday, and I'll give you a Calendly link. I'll be sat in the Colston Hall, which is a big venue in Bristol, in the cafe there on a Thursday. You can book your hour slot with me, and I'll just sit in there all day, and the clients got used to that. And then what I did was I moved it to a twice weekly one, but not telling my clients. So my clients would just look and think, oh, he's busy that Thursday, I'll do next Thursday. And there was no pushback from anybody. So it meant even when we were in Bristol, I only needed to come into Bristol once a fortnight towards the end. And then when the pandemic came in and I was thinking of moving to Cornwall, I said, what's the worst? Even if I come back to Bristol once a fortnight on a Thursday, that's doable still with the move. So, and the team were up for it. So I just thought, let's do it. But it was all without the systemization, the strong systems, processes and software. It would be impossible to work remotely as a team.
Fascinating. So a slightly different tack, but I have to say, I thought I knew your story, but I'm getting the richness of it through, and it's amazing how much it's evolved even over the last 2 years, because I just assumed 2 years ago you were surfing in Cornwall, and You only just moved 2 years ago, didn't you?
Yeah, we did we moved literally between the sort of first and second lockdown. I think we came down. So
Yeah. Wow. So now we know you've got a really strong niche. You know, you live and breathe your niche. It's your background. It's what your plan A would have been. Sadly, that didn't work out, so you had to fall to plan B. But it's one thing having that industry knowledge. It's another thing monetizing it. So what are some of the things you do, of the practical steps and tactics you do to monetize your music, media, entertainment niche?
I think the kind of selling point I had was having worked in the industry and had a bit of a name. I also very early on, this was a long time ago, but there was an advert in the ICAW leaflet saying we're setting up. This is when it was the General Practitioners Board at ICAW, and they said, "Oh, we're setting up a load of special interest groups so that people can, you know." And they did a hospitality group, and then they said they were setting up an entertainment media special interest group, and they said, "Is there anyone interested in getting involved?" So I replied, said, "Yeah, I'd be up for coming out." So we all went up to London, did a meeting. And it was John Malthouse at the time, and he seeds these groups, he sets them up. So we went up there, you know, what we're going to do, what we're going to offer to members, and all this sort of stuff. And then I don't know if it's because I was the most outspoken at the meeting or whatever, or the meetings we had. And then he said, "Craig, I'd like you to chair the group going forward." So he'd then leave that group and then start seeding another group in another sector. So I ended up chairing the ICAW Entertainment Media Special Interest Group for 13 years. I think I was the longest chair. And that gave me a lot of contacts with it, you know, talking to other accountants and things, and also just industry. You know, we did seminars, other things, and the other way it worked was through reaching out to industry bodies. You know, I used to do free event surgeries for Musicians Union, writing articles, speaking at events, things like that, really. So it's gradually building up reputation and getting the contacts within the sector, and then it kind of, you get into little niches. Like back in the day in the late 90s, we started, it was really weird actually, we picked up a client who was really into drum and bass or jungle at the time, and then before we knew it, we had people from all over the country swarming in. So we were dealing with all the top kind of drum and bass artists in that little niche, you know. So it's just really funny how you kind of, you know, the word gets around, really. Yeah.
To be fair, I think people say I've got a little niche in the fact that I only deal with small growing accountancy firms. So, but yeah, it is funny, isn't it? How and so another thing that I remember you told me is one of the things that you've become very well aware of is that when you get a client that moves to a new agent, you then go and talk to that new agent.
Yeah.
Because what it tends to do is then bring in a flood of new business from that agent. So I think that key here is really knowing the gatekeepers to your profession. Who are the ones that are going to open those doors if you've got A, credibility because you've been working on a client of theirs, and B, they're connected to lots more clients of yours?
Yeah, and they've normally worked obviously with other accountants, so they look at the way you work, and then if you work different to them or you connect to them, or they're like, "Oh, this is great, you know, I'll put everything your way," and then you get kind of clusters.
So apart from drum and bass, is there any other clusters you have?
We do a lot of comedians actually. Again, built a little niche in comedians.
Didn't expect that one. I was thinking there was going to be some heavy metal, knowing your background.
No, yeah, that's my background. We do have a lot of heavy rock stuff because it's my particular interest, but we do, you know, film and TVs. It's interesting actually, because I always started, my passion was music, and I started in that. We did, when we were looking at growth, we specifically took a view to target film and TV in terms of profitability, ease of dealing with the clients, and that sort of thing, really. And it was very lucky we moved a lot of effort into bringing on new business in film and TV when the pandemic hit. Because if we'd have been 80-20 music, we'd have been in a far worse position now than we would have been. Because obviously the live music industry got hit. Wiped out.
And I think that's a really important point. And I look back at my own businesses, and at various times How to Make Partner has propped up the Accountants Growth Club and vice versa. And I think it's really important that when you build your business, you are looking to hedge your bets a little. Yeah, be niche, but also make sure that in your contingency plan that there's always a backup if something happens.
Yeah, nobody expected, on my
No.
SWOT analysis, pandemic wasn't on there.
I bet it is now.
Right, yeah.
So with the benefit of hindsight, apart from the pandemic, but that almost sounded like that's actually accelerated your progress because it moved you to do things. But what has hurt you or your practice or slowed your progress down to where you need to be? And I'm not talking about the multitude of times you break your nose when surfing.
I think, if there's decent swell, that slows the growth of my practice down. And the way,
and you're not joking, are you?
Nah,
You get a good bit of swell.
I think a lot of it, the majority of my challenges since I started has always been people. Changing personnel. I'm going through a challenge at the moment where I've got to change a critical personnel, so I'm kind of been struggling with that a little bit. So it's always been people. The business relies on people, personalities, and contact with clients. And then and it's nothing, nobody's ever left because they hated the practice or anything. People have always left because their lifestyle or things have changed. So it's always been amicable and a discussion and everything else, but it's just that people's agendas change, and it's very painful when you kind of rely on those people, and you can't blame them. I congratulate them for making the decision of things, but it's still hard. And that was a lot of the motivation for the, going for the outsource sort of offshore model, was just the constant issues with, personnel, HR, that sort of thing, really. And the other big thing is myself, really. I think, the biggest challenge is making yourself do the right thing, or forcing yourself to do the right decisions, or being accountable to make the right decisions. Because sometimes when the challenges, come up, I'm like rabbit in the headlights sometimes, and I'm kind of like, I can't really struggle to get clarity on things. So I'm aware that, so a lot of the solution is working on self-development, really, in terms of getting through these things. So.
I know you've said to me that you're great with change when you instigate it.
Yeah.
But when you get presented with it, you spin the wheels.
Yeah, and it's a weird one, because sort of, in rescue world, if I've got somebody in the water or in a storm or a cliff rescue or something, and I'm running the job, I can kind of, make the plan A, plan B, plan C, execute, all that sort of thing. But sometimes it comes with my own practice. When you get something that just comes across, you just kind of like, oh, okay, I'll procrastinate a bit longer on that, and then some.
I think it's because in our business, it's rarely a life or death situation. Whereas, as you say, when you're on a cliff face, the training kicks in, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A number of scenarios, a number of contingencies, and we have to do it now. And you have to take a decision, don't you?
Yeah.
Okay, it really helps. So how can I think you've answered my next question, but I'm just going to go out to people that have been listening in. What questions have you got for Craig about his journey? And so what would you tell people who are listening to this that want to be a bit of Craig, that want to have this, their work fits around their lifestyle? What would your passing comments be to them on what they need to do, don't need to do?
Take control, make a plan, make it into bite-sized pieces, execute the plan, and just make sure that, day by day, you're chipping away, making a step forward, not doing anything. And if you're making steps forward, but make sure you kind of, the first thing for me, the hardest thing was, what is the plan? What do you want? Why are you doing this? And there's a lot of soul searching, finding out, right, okay, this is what I want. What's the ultimate thing? What's the lifestyle thing I want now? And then it's looking at where your practice is now, where it needs to be, not just your practice, but yourself as well. Where does everything need to be to make that happen? And then it's putting a plan together, getting some help.
So I've got an interesting question from Tracy, who I know is a portfolio FD. I hope I've got that right, Tracy. And I know you've gone through a few iterations with outsourcers, and you've learned probably the hard way over the last 5 years.
Yeah.
how have you found the right partner for outsourcing? It might be easier to go tell us how you didn't find the right partner at the moment, but how have you found the right partner for outsourcing?
Still haven't.
So what's your benefit? What's your reflection? What have you learned if you haven't yet found the right partner? What have you learned?
It's a constant evolution, and as the practice changes and evolves, the outsourcing solution isn't always the right solution that was right sort of a while back isn't now right. But I think a really important thing, because I'm talking to other outsourcing things at the moment, and I think one of the important things which I hadn't done before was actually to write down what did my ideal outsourcing solution look like to me. What was I looking for? What did it look like in terms of I would meet somebody once a week, I would do this is how it would look, the work would flow this way, I would get this. And then when I kind of got that and I communicated that to people, then people got it more than me just saying, I want an outsourced solution, I want you to do my tax returns, I want you to do this. It's more a case of how does it look? How does the relationship look? How does the team with a new outsourcer work, really? But it's a constant. And the other thing, outsourcers change. So it's not just about your changing the practice. Outsourcers change, their capacities change, staff changes. So it's not a constant thing. But the most important thing, again, which I keep saying over and over again, is systems and processes so that you can monitor things and you've got a handle on it. And that's even more important where you're a remote practice, so you've got people that aren't working in the office with you. Without these processes and checklists and everything else, you've got, you just lose control of everything.
And a follow-up question from Tracy. Are you, and I'm paraphrasing Tracy, have you offshored, i.e. you own the employees in India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Philippines, or have you outsourced where you have an organization who are managing the workflow and what that happens?
Both. My business partner is from Pakistan, so him and his wife, they've set up an offshore office. So they've recruited in Pakistan, set an office up. So they've got the sort of in-house team members, and we've been using them. That's got its own challenges as well. And we also use historically we'd always use sort of an outsourcing solution, and we've gone the last year or two with the office set up in Pakistan, we've been doing the offshoring, but we're still using a combination of, because of capacity issues in Pakistan setting up a new office and things, we're still using a combination of the Pakistan office and India.
And I think I would concur with you. I don't think there's a right model out there, and I think it all starts from you sitting down and going, because most people just go, I need help with tax returns, I need help with year-end accounts, I don't want to be doing the compliance side, I want to be the portfolio FD, I need the operation behind me. But they don't, as you say, go into that level of detail. So how often will I have a team meeting with them? Which of our meetings will they be naturally included with? When do I need an update? What software will they use? What process? How will I know that this? And it's when you go into this level of detail, I think it's a lot easier to find the right partner for you. And I also think you're right that as your practice evolves, your needs change. So I'm thinking if you're a really tiny practice, you want an outsourcer that will do pay as you go, that will do the dribs and drabs of jobs. And often with that, you might be looking at a UK based contractor because it's easier. Because a lot of the big outsourcing companies, you either get quite poor service on a pay as you go model, or it's very expensive on a pay as you go model, obviously, because they want to get you into a fixed seat, whether it's half a seat, full seat. And I think that can work well for a certain period of time when you get big enough to know that you're always going to need 3 sets of accounts done each month. And I think you're then right. You then tend to often, as you say, then go to a model where you've got some offshore team members that are your team members, because you know you can make it work remotely, but you want control over them in the way that you still don't get that control in a fixed seat relationship. And as you say, it's almost having a mixture of both when you get to a certain size. So you've got that flexibility and the contingency. Because have you been hit by your outsourcers having trouble with COVID and being able to do the work?
Yeah, we had, well, originally when the pandemic came in, that was a real panic actually. So that was an issue. I mean, we got through it. But when we started smaller, the best outsourcing we had was with UK outsourcers. That was the best service, and although they charged more, the jobs were done quicker. On average, I'm finding when we outsource or offshore, they take 1.5 to 2 times as long to do the jobs as a UK person generally. So just looking at the prices per hour is not, it's not a like for like thing really.
Yeah, you want to, as you say, you want to be looking at either the fixed price and how much work can I get through on that fixed price. Absolutely. And I had a really good point. And one of the things that we now need to be more aware of, as we're getting more disruption with climate change, we're getting a lot more, what I would say, emergencies, crises that are often hitting the major offshoring centres. You only need to see Pakistan has got major problems with floods at the moment, and very sorry situation. I think of at Christmas, we have a Filipino team member. A typhoon went right through the centre of her island, had to evacuate. She couldn't get back online for 4 weeks. And then for another month after that, although she was back in her house, she was living with her parents because they had Wi-Fi. And it's, when you think about your outsourced offshore solution, it is worth making sure you don't put all your eggs in one basket, because these things are happening in more and more regularity, and we need to make sure that we're covering that risk. I think that's all the questions we've got. Craig, how can people get in touch with you? Because I have to say, I've found this conversation fascinating. Really have done. How can people get in touch with you, Craig?
Just get through the website. It's www.z-e-n.co.uk, or just drop me an email.
So www.z-e-n.co.uk. Absolutely. But yes, thank you very much, Craig. And you are living proof that you can have a life and only do a tiny bit of accountancy and have a growing accountancy practice. And I do actually look forward to meeting you in person one of these days. I might be slightly celebrity, girl crush. But yeah, thank you very much. And I know Tracy say thank you, Sarah say thank you. And I think this is one that I think we will want others to listen to. So brilliant. Thank you very much, Craig. Bye.
Cheers, everyone. Thanks.